So, welcome to this webinar. This is creating marketing messages with purpose. This is going to be a really practical, very tactical, very hands-on session here today with Cambridge Marketing College. I'm Neil Wilkins, one of the tutors on the program. Creating marketing messages with purpose has basically got the opportunity here to focus in, if you like, and if you want to follow along and actually do this whilst you're listening or watching to this webinar. If you have one product or service in mind as we go, you can apply all of the things, all the techniques, all the tools, all the approaches that we're going to be talking about to this one product or service as we go. So that's what I'm saying, very, very practical. So the tools you're going to need is a notepad or maybe access to Word document or something like that you can obviously add your notes in as we go, and access to your favorite AI, so ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude, and something like Hemingway Editor, which you may already have access to. So if you've got all those things together, if not, press pause if you're watching this on catch up, and we will be good to go. So when we talk about purpose in marketing, what do we actually mean? Well, purposeful messages solve a real customer problem. They're genuine, they're real, they're authentic, they actually mean something. Purposeful messages also reflect brand values and tone. So that will be something that we're going to be exploring, ensuring that whatever application, whatever example you've decided on actually does reflect the brand values and tone of your organization. And purposeful messages also inspire action or connection. So the first thing I want you to think about is a little bit of a reflection moment for just a moment here is why does your brand exist beyond making profit? That's true purpose. Think about actually the value that you bring. Do you really solve customer problems beyond your products and services and beyond making profit and selling stuff? Why does your brand exist beyond those things? There might be something a little deeper, a little bit more reflective, a little bit more important than purely trading. And the second reflection I'd like you to think about is what difference do you want your message to make? Because anybody publishing a campaign, an advert, some kind of post in social media, unless you actually want to make a difference to the reader or the listener's behavior, then that message is just a lot more noise adding to this crescendo of information that we all receive and send, if we're marketers often, every single day. So what difference do you want your message to make in terms of the way somebody thinks or the way somebody acts or the way somebody behaves? A framework that you can use if you want to go deeper into this, maybe after this session, is Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. That's often called Start with Why. Then you can take the reason why, so your purpose, this greater meaning for why you exist as a brand or as an organization, and then think about the how. How can we deliver against that why? And then with the how, then think about what. What is it we have that we can then use in the how we're going to do it to deliver against the why? This golden circle is a great framework for just that check and balance and stopping and thinking about a better reason really for existing as an organization. So now, once we've done that, we've kind of established the groundwork. So we've decided on a product or service. We've established the why, the purpose, and the kind of the overarching essence of what we're trying to achieve with it. In other words, what action or behavior or frame of mind are we trying to improve or change in our target audience? So now we can move into what we're going to call part one, core message foundations. Now, if we want to communicate this purpose or this product or service, we need to be considering the four qualities of a strong message: clarity, relevance, emotion, and action. With clarity, we need to be speaking with very plain language, no jargon or acronyms allowed. Even if we think the audience might understand, that is not clear. So clarity is key. Relevance. We need to match the message, especially if we're hoping it's going to be a strong message, to the audience's need. What does your audience need right now? What do they need to hear? What do they need to experience? What do they need changing or improving in their world? The third element here in these four qualities of a strong message is emotion. We need emotion triggered. We need to trigger empathy or curiosity or some kind of feeling in our target audience. Because if they just interact with their thoughts rather than their feelings, we're missing the great trick here of actually getting a message strong that's going to land. And the fourth element in the four qualities of a strong message is action. We need to direct the next step, having encountered this message or having read this particular piece or having seen something that has created the emotion and this opportunity to engage. The action is the engagement, the next step, often called the call to action. So those are the four qualities of a strong message that at least gets you in the game for this behavioral change that you're looking to achieve. So moving that one on, then we need to probably simplify the message. So a task is maybe choose a current marketing line that you have. So think about your product or service that you've chosen, and it might be something that you could really change, or it could be something that you could rewrite to be clearer, to avoid vague adjectives, because a current marketing line could be something like innovative digital solutions for modern business. Well, could you avoid adjectives? Could it be more benefit led? In other words, what does it do for the customer? Could it be more conversational, using second person, you, in other words, actually within the narrative? So an example revision from, something like maybe before we would say we deliver innovative software for dynamic enterprises. And afterwards, having made it more clear, made it benefit led and conversational, we might say, we help your team work smarter with software that fits the way you already work. Just think about the different emotional engagement rather than we deliver innovative software for dynamic enterprises. Okay, and I'm meant to get interested because you're kind of left hanging, aren't you? But then think now about we help your team work smarter with software that fits the way you already work. So it's reducing a pain point, it's actually talking their language, it's directly referencing them, it's super clear, and there's a clear outcome. So, a really interesting kind of way of looking at this in terms of simplifying, rewriting, and then doing it in such a way that there's real ownership on the other side from the audience's perspective. Now, a tool that you can use, I mentioned Hemingway a little bit earlier. Hemingway Editor here is going to enable you to test the readability and the tone, both before and after. And so you're going to be able to just do this little check and balance using this software that will enable you to see, okay, so we've kind of got this kind of creative, new, innovative way of speaking, but is it readable? Is the readability improved? Is the tone of voice in keeping with our brand? And that'll be something we'll go into a little bit more deeply in a minute. So those are kind of setting the foundations, if you like, for our messaging. Then we can move to part two, which is our message frameworks. Seeing where the message is going to fit within a longer journey of experience or engagement with the target audience. And for this, we might be using something like the AIDA model. This is a classic copy framework: attention, interest, desire, and action. With attention, it's the headline or the hook. Interest, it's got to be relatable benefit or insight that is gained by the audience. Desire, the emotional or rational reason to care. Why would I be interested? And of course, that rewrite a moment ago is a good example of that. And then the action, the second A is action, the clear next step or call to action. So the exercise for you here then is, could you think if you were to draft one AIDA message for your chosen product that actually gets some attention? So what kind of headline or hook might kind of draw somebody in? Doesn't have to be perfect at this stage, but what we're doing is we're playing with some of these models and seeing how they play out in reality for you. And what kind of interest, what relatable benefit or insight does this product or service you've chosen give to the audience? And the desire, what kind of emotional or rational reason should they care about? What is it that you can engage with and you can share? And almost use as the transactional piece. In other words, I'm going to give you this little bit of emotion. You're going to want this because X, Y, or Z. And then the action is, well, how do I get it? If I like what I hear, I'm interested in what I see or what I read, then yeah, okay, I'm up for this. What's the next step? So, what would your clear next action step be? So think about that. It's a really interesting sort of proposition and starting point. And this is really, really foundational stuff. I mean, this goes back to Strong, the Psychology of Selling and Advertising, 1925. This is not new stuff. This is stuff that is really embedded in effective marketing and communications going back over 100 years. So this stuff really works. It would not still apply if it didn't work. So really think about maybe applying this to your product or service. And then we can use the PAS model: problem, agitate, solve. In other words, with your product or service, maybe you could identify a pain point. This is another message framework. Identify a pain point that this product or service could help to solve. And then agitate or describe the consequence. In other words, really kind of rub in the fact that if you don't really attend to this pain point, it could get worse, or it might last longer, or it could become more uncomfortable. And then solve, offer your solution. So here's an example. Problem: you waste hours chasing invoices. Agitate: late payments hold back your cash flow. And then the solving could be: our platform automates reminders and gets you paid faster. It's an interesting one there, isn't it? So you've identified a problem, you've really rubbed that problem in, and then you've said, well, we can solve that for you. It's a simple but very effective opportunity here to use a framework in a very simplistic way with your product or service. So write your PAS message, your problem that you're solving, the agitation that you're building here, and then the solving of the problem with your product or service that you've chosen. Another little moment to reflect. And I'm sure, again, if you're listening or watching this on catch up, what you'll be doing is pressing pause to take a moment to just kind of figure out, what will I put into those boxes? What will I add against those categories? This is important to work along with this. And another messaging framework, which again is a very simple one, but so profoundly brilliant, was from Ogilvy Advertising Agency on Advertising, 1983. And this is the so what test. So after each message that you've created there, ask, so what? Until the ultimate benefit is clear. So, as an example, fast service. So what? Well, saves you time. So what? Well, it gives you more time for your clients. And then you could say, so what? So we can add more value. So what? Well, so we can create more business and deeper relationships. So what? Well, so there's a win-win for the client and for us. So what? So we build customer or client lifetime value. So what? So we make more profit and do better for the client. So what? Etc., etc., etc. You can go deeper and deeper and deeper until you get to the true benefit. And this is so important to do. This is one of those checkpoints that is a real filter for getting this stuff right. Because if you can get deep to the real benefit, that's the thing ultimately that is the value for both you and your audience. Now we can take all of those principles and this framework and this kind of either strapline or this piece that you're writing. It might be a social post for this product or service that you're talking about here as your example. We're going to move to part 3 now, which is writing for different channels. So headlines and hooks. This is really, really important to get the attention that is going to go around creating these marketing messages that work with purpose. Is we need to be thinking about some of the best ways that we can actually get the attention so that people will then go deeper into this kind of thing that we're creating. So they'll be interested enough to dwell and have the attention for long enough to actually read and take the message on board to then do the action. Because if we don't hook them in, well, they're not there in our sort of line of sight at all. So the headlines and hooks is a key first point here. So you can use numbers, 3 ways to whatever it is. You can do questions. Are you ready to whatever it is? Or you can use contrasting statements. Stop wasting, start growing. So these are ways that you can actually create headlines or hooks that just stop people in the moment. It just grabs attention. It just is enough, just enough to get them to go to the next stage of engaging with your message. So there are many, many tools available to help you do this. CoSchedule's Headline Analyzer, which is a free tool, might be worth you having a little look at here. So the tip is promise one benefit and deliver it. So just pause again and think about this product or service. Could you use numbers, questions, or contrasts to hook somebody in with the initial headline? Once you've done that, one of the channels that you're very likely to be using, obviously, is social networking. So you may well be using this message that you're putting out there, that you're creating within social media. So typically, the structure of a social media post is going to have a first line, a hook or a question. It's then going to have a second line, the relatable scenario, which is what we've already been building, this really engaging thing that engages both emotionally and technically. And then a third line, which is the offer or the call to action. So write one three-line post using either your AIDA or your PAS message and see if you can actually get this into this structure for your social media. A three-line post, the hook or question, the relatable scenario, and then the offer or the call to action. Now, you can generate different variations of this. It's unlikely you're going to hit the ground with an absolutely perfect answer here the first time round. So maybe you can use Flick AI or Lately.ai to generate some variations, which you can then test. This is the key thing. You won't necessarily get this right first time, but the beauty of social media is you get another chance and another chance and another chance. So maybe across different social networks, you try different versions or variations of these social posts with these three-line structures. That could be well worth doing. Or maybe within a specific social network, you try it at different points in time. Maybe you try one in a certain format today and then a second variation tomorrow. Again, gives you another opportunity to do that. So that could be a nice way of building this kind of storytelling up in a most effective way. Because by doing each one, each variation, you'll learn versus the previous ones. Undoubtedly, if you're considering lots of different channels, something you will be using is email. Many of us are now returning back to email, which was out of vogue with the growth of social media, but is now very much back and very much enabling these one-to-one communications. And a similar kind of approach applies here. These are marketing messages going through powerfully. And the techniques that you can use here are things like personalization. You need to add in the person's name. So, for example, you could say, as part of a subject line for your next email, Neil, are you ready to save time? So by putting that person's name in, well, one, it's great for the spam filters. Often because it's named and directed at the named individual, it'll bypass the spam filter because it feels more human. And then, of course, the little hook is personalized. Well, of course, I want to save time. Why wouldn't I? And then you've hooked the person in for the detailed message that then follows. Curiosity is also interesting by making statements like, you've been doing this wrong all year. You could say it's a little bit clickbait, but actually these statements work. These kinds of subject lines can be hugely powerful because the curiosity says, well, what have I been doing wrong all year? What is it that you're challenging me with? I bet I haven't. And even that kind of a reaction can be, oh, that's what you're talking about. Oh, well, okay, yeah, maybe I have. Oh, and you've got a solution for that. That's interesting. So you're building step by step this intrigue and curiosity. And of course, as many of us know, if we've been doing this stuff for a while, you'll know that urgency, of course, without pressure, can often really work. So only 2 days left to register. That fear of missing out, FOMO, is absolutely key here. It's a psychological technique that can really stimulate behavior in the moment. And again, other things, other AI tools can predict open rates based on the kinds of points that you're making here. So Phrasee or Seventh Sense could be worth testing. So your little exercise here, if you want to press pause again, is to draft 3 different subject lines and test with a tool or maybe peer feedback to see which one resonates and which one gets the most opens. Refining and testing, as what I was just suggesting that we do there, is again, obviously, as we'll all appreciate, a really important part of this as we begin to write for channels with these styles of messages. So, refining and testing, editing with AI support. A lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't be using AI for content, it needs to be human. But co creating and collaborating with AI is hugely powerful. So you can use things like ChatGPT to rewrite a message to be more benefit-led and concise, for example. You can use a tool like Grammarly to check for clarity and for tone of voice. And Writer.com you can use for brand voice and consistency. So maybe an action you could take here is to paste your top message into ChatGPT and test 3 rewrites. Choose the best phrasing that is coming through in terms of the outputs for the one that you're actually going to post. Another thing that you can do as well is really focusing on maybe some quick testing techniques that maybe don't take quite as long, but can be as equally important to your knowledge growth here and to kind of really establishing the evidence for which elements are going to work in your messaging. A/B or split testing on email or social platforms, comparing just one little change to 2 variations or 2 versions of something can give you a very quick little test of which one's likely to perform best if you go out then at scale. You can use Google Ads preview tool to simulate search visibility. You can track engagement per version, click-through rates, dwell time, and comments, for example. And to really go deeper into these little quick testing techniques, I'd recommend that you go to something like HubSpot's Academy. If you search out HubSpot Academy, and they have things like an A/B testing course available to you, along with a load of other different tips and tricks that will help you to write more effectively and consistently learn what it is your customers are going to be most likely to engage with. And then you can obviously do continuous improvement beyond that. And so, having done all of those things, we then come to part 4 of our 5-step process, which is bringing it all together. What you need to now do, because you'll want to do this consistently from an ongoing basis, not just this one-off little exercise, is to build your message toolkit. Now, your final toolkit should include one short tagline under 10 words, one expanded product message, maybe 50 to 75 words by the time you've edited it and improved it, one social post variation. That'd be nice because you tested again, so now you've got the one that's really going to work well. One email subject line, and you can save as a core messaging bank in some kind of shared document if you've got an agency or some colleagues who are working with you. This is your message toolkit. It's the kind of the de facto standard. This is the new bar that you're working from. And you can use that, of course, in your AI prompting. If you're getting first drafts with your favorite AI, it can then learn and understand that this is the format that we're going to go with from here onwards. You can also then bring it together with a quality checklist. So building on that message toolkit by building a quality checklist. And you can use this before publishing any message. You need to check, can a 10-year-old understand it? That's a great little trick. This is checking for quality because it needs to be super clear, particularly for the search engines, because they rate things based on young people's ability to read stuff. The more technical you get, the worse the rating will be. So can a 10-year-old understand what you're sharing? The tone, does it sound like your brand and not an AI? We don't want to see M dashes. We don't want to see rhetorical flourishes. We don't want to see contrasting statements. Those 3 key things that just give away, oh, this was written by AI. It needs to sound in the tone of voice like your brand. Another quality checklist feature is value. Is the customer's benefit obvious? And it really has to be obvious. Don't let people guess. Don't let people work it out for themselves. They either have neither the time nor the inclination to do that. So make it super clear why it's you, why it's this product, or why it's this service. And the final point in this one, CTVA, check, tone, value, action, is A for action. Is there a clear next step? What is my next click? What is the next thing you want me to do? How do you want me to feel as a result of working with this? There's got to be super clear. So the key takeaways here in this creating marketing messages with purpose is start with purpose, the why. Use proven structure. ADA, PAS, whatever it is you choose to do, that is an important way to keep the consistency. We've said consistently here as well, adapting for the channel and the audience, really thinking and reflecting on what's in it for them. That's key. Refine with AI. Yes, obviously, AI can really help you, really supercharge what you're doing, but review with human judgment. That is so, so key. Do not leave it to the AI to make the final version. Yours is the final decision. And build a living message bank, the thing I was just talking about there, to ensure consistency, not only every time you do it, but every time everybody else gets involved in it too. And recommended tools and resources, bring them into the mix. These are your assistants. This is your content or marketing message team. So Hemingway Editor for readability, ChatGPT, Claude, or others for brainstorming new ideas, CoSchedule, Headline Analyzer for headline scoring, Phrasee or 7sense for subject line testing, and Writer.com or Grammarly to check out your tone and grammar. It's fine to use AI in moderation, in the right kind of specialist way, but you are in charge. This is your marketing message and it's your purpose. These are just tools to help you on your way. And if you want to go deeper into any of these concepts, we've moved quickly through this with your one little example of a product or service that hopefully now you've been able to apply to some of these techniques too. But if you want to go deeper, there are many, many interesting books that you can actually refer to. And I've included some of those actually on this particular page. But as a final reflection, everything that you write, everything that you create, if you want to be marketing message friendly, if you like, with purpose, should sit at the intersection of three things: purpose, clarity, and action. That's the sweet spot. Writing with purpose, writing with clarity, and stimulating a positive action from it. Because if any of those three things are missing in the next message that you publish, there's work to be done. So this is now your mantra: purpose, clarity, and action in everything you do. Why am I sending this message to somebody? Am I clear in how I'm communicating? And what specific action am I trying to stimulate in the audience? Because if I can get that right, then my messages will be well received and the actions will be clear for the benefit of all.